Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today we continue the countdown for my top 100 favorite fantasy series. At number 70, I have Adrian Tchaikovsky's Tyrant Philosophers series. And this follows the imperial aspirations of the Palestine Empire as they bring perfection to their subjugated colonies at the business end of their weapons, essentially. And this epic series by Adrian Tchaikovsky, it follows it essentially works as a series of interconnected standalones, and we follow a varied cast of characters in a variety of settings, and we get to see each story is practically its own thing. It has its own story to share in its own way, each told with a different objective in mind. And in every single book, no two books are the same. It's pretty cool. There's a cast of characters that fluctuate over the course of the books. We might or might not see recurring characters, and it's just really, really incredible because we get three different looks at the way that what happens when the empire comes calling, what it means for each individual empire as they're essentially forced to deal with the Palestine. And on top of the usual epic fantasy stuff, like Adrian Tchaikovsky just has this feckin' imagination that just runs wild all over the place with these books. Like the second book, House of Open Wounds, is one of the funniest books I've read in 2024. There's elements of cosmic horror thrown in here. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on. Like these books are just entertaining, compelling, you name it. Funnily enough, I didn't have that good a time with City of Last Chances, the very first one, but the second one, House of Open Wounds, completely blew me out of the water, and the third one, Days of Shattered Fate, is easily one of my favorite books of 2024. Like this series, you have to try it to see if it works here or not. It's just crazy and entertaining and just brilliant. At number 69, I have John Flanagan's Ranger Apprentice, and this is another middle grade / YA pick, following Will, who's the eponymous Ranger's Apprentice, and the series of adventures that he goes on as essentially serving while protecting the realm on the king's behalf. And these stories, like it's a quite an extensive series at this point because I think there was a spin-off and all of that, but it's basically a series that incorporates all the tropes and concepts and ideas from classic epic fantasy. So, like, you'll find all sorts of crazy stuff happen over the course of these books. They're distilled down for a younger audience. Not to say that there isn't high stakes and high and danger and all of these things. But they're essentially light-hearted adventures. They're entertaining. They're if you're looking to get a kid into epic fantasy, I don't think you could pick a better series than this one to introduce them to like a wide range of what epic fantasy has to offer, specifically classic epic fantasy. Yeah, so that's Ranger's Apprentice. At number 68, I have David Gemmell's Greek series, which is historical fiction with a fantastic twist, following key figures from Greek history. And as they play their games of empire and they prepare for prophecy of an apocalyptic figure who is going to change the world as they know it. So the first book is Lion of Macedon, and we, oddly enough, we don't follow like Alexander the Great or anything, but we follow another character and his and in true David Gemmell fashion, like this is very much like a sword and sorcery story told in a historical fantasy setting, with a fantastic twist to it. Like this is just entertaining. Everything you love about David Gemmell, entertaining, action-packed, fast-paced, you name it. It's all in this book. And Lion of Macedon in particular has a plot twist at the end that I did not see coming. Like I'm not familiar with Greek history enough to like know who these characters are or what like they're there or to know anything about these characters. So that ending hit me like an 18-wheeler. And the sequel book is pretty much exactly what you would expect given the way that line of Macedon ended. So it's a duology. It's an entertaining one at that. And if you're a fan of Gennell's works, or Sword and Sorcery in general, it's worth checking out. The next, at number 67, I have Elizabeth Beer's Eternal Sky and Lotus Kingdoms trilogies. And these are two epic fantasy trilogies that take place in the same setting. With the Eternal Sky trilogy, we have it's a Mongolian-inspired epic fantasy trilogy, in just this really vibrant and strange twist on the steps, where we follow Timur, who is a grandson of this war's version of Genghis Khan, as he becomes embroiled in this battle against a magical threat to the Khaganate. And like, if you're tired of European flavored epic fantasy, you can't do much better than this. Like, this series this trilogy had everything in it, like dark wizards, heroic epic fantasy, the evil threats, you name it, it's all in there. And of course, like, that it has that it has that distinct setting and flavor to it that's very different from what you would typically see in epic fantasy. And that's just the first trilogy. In the second one, we have the Lotus Kingdoms trilogy. We follow two very unique main characters, and as they become embroiled in a succession war among the various Lotus Kingdoms for the alchemical throne, which is they're basically trying to pick their next emperor. And like, that's just a wild political fancy hard war, and you name it. And in between all of that, there's just this flavor of mysticism and eldritch happenings going on as just strange things happen. Like, both these trilogies, they're rife with imagination, entertaining storytelling, interesting characters. They're going to be unlike anything you've read to date. The Lotus Kingdoms trilogy, by the way, it has a bit more of an Indian flavor to it, not as obvious as you would think, and it does tie to the Mongolian trilogy in the way that there are references to it, and it very clearly takes place in the same setting, essentially. But yeah, like, Elizabeth Beer is a severely underappreciated author, and with these two trilogies, she proved she can write fantasy and epic fantasy with the best of them out there. Like, these are just really fun reads, and more if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely check them out. At number 66 is a pick that I even surprised myself it's this high, but it's actually Terry Brooks' Shannara. And I don't think I even need to introduce this. Like, Shannara is iconic. You could even argue that it's a series that proved that fantasy as a genre could be commercially viable to publishers, and that Lord of the Rings wasn't just a one-off, one-hit wonder. So, like, just in that regard, the impact it's had on fantasy as a genre is unimaginable. But yeah, like, the series itself is pretty derivative of Lord of the Rings, which was exactly what it was written intending to be, to give the masses something just like Lord of the Rings. So you can't exactly knock something for setting out to be. You can't exactly knock something that was set out very intentionally to be what it is. But yeah, that's the first book, The Sword of Shannara, and then from the second one of the original trilogy, Terry Brooks really starts to make this world and this setting and this series and these characters his own. And over the course of the many decades that he's been writing these books, he's very much made it his own thing. Personally, I don't think I'm going to be reading very much more of Shannara. Like, I've read the original trilogy and I've read the Defenders of Shannara, which is a trilogy much later on in terms of timeline. And I read that mainly because I was told that it's a good one to read if you want to see just how drastically things have changed. And Terry Brooks has essentially allowed his world to progress in a way that Tolkien never did. So that was fun, but ultimately, like, these are very much classic epic fantasy stories. I don't think I'll be returning to them, as much as I apparently had a fairly fun time reading these two trilogies. But yeah, after reading them, like you can understand why genre has such a strong following, especially among like older fantasy readers. Yeah, at number 65, I have another classic epic fantasy. Well, it's inspired by classic epic fantasy, at least. And this particular series is Codex Alera by Jim Butcher. And if you ever wondered what the last Roman Legion would look like if it entered a world where Pokemon existed, this is the series for you. That's basically the concept we follow where we enter this world where there's essentially an alternative version of the Roman Empire who have magic users who comprise their legions and these kind of things. And when I say like this series is very heavily inspired by classic fantasy, it's no joke. The first book is pretty much the farm boy trope. The second book is the magic school trope. But where it gets interesting is that from the second book, Jim Butcher really manages to hook you, and from the third, it's entirely his own. Like if you're into like sword and sandals, like reading stories of the Roman legions going around and kicking butt, this might be right up your alley, albeit in a very fantastical way. And this series is just loaded with interesting characters. There's complicated relationships and politics. It does have some flaws that, because this was written very early in his career, it does have some flaws that Jim Butcher is unfortunately known for, where it comes to his depiction of women. But it's not as crass and overt as some of the other depictions I've seen, unfortunately, in Dresden Files. But it's just an entertaining series. Started like by the end of this series, I was completely hooked. I was extremely entertained, because at the end of the day, Jim Butcher is a really good writer, and he put together something pretty interesting when he did this series. It's 6 books, fun, action packed, and yeah. But you know what's not really fun? My next series, 64, number 64, Lynn Flueling's Tamir Triad. And this year we take a very definitive shift away from the light-hearted fun stuff. And what we have here is kind of a genre bent and gender bent story of combination of epic fantasy and horror. Like the first book, the main character is a prophesied queen, and in order to save her life at birth, her twin is sacrificed so that her body, her spirit, her soul can be, her body can be changed into that of a male. And in that way, she can be disguised and go through life until the time is right for her to essentially assume her mantle. And as a result of that particular piece of dark magic, literally at birth, the ghost of her dead brother haunts her. So the first book is all about the coming of age of this prophecy queen, and it's this crazy mix of gothic horror and epic fantasy. And then from the second book we get a much more political thriller, and it just goes from there. Like this series is just, I haven't read anything like this. I don't think I ever will read another combination quite like this. Like this book, in addition to being very much an epic fantasy, or at least a political fantasy, this book delves very deep into topics of, as you can guess from that setup, it delves very deep into topics of gender, morality, friendship, love, and just the confusion of puberty and these kind of things. Like it's crazy. It's a very fascinating trilogy. It may not necessarily be a fun one, but it is a very fascinating read. And if you're a fan of epic fantasy or like fantasy in general, it's worth trying. It's going to be very different from anything that you've read. Like, I don't know why more people aren't at least discussing this book, because Lynn Flueling really did something very different here when she put this one together. But yeah, at number 63, I have Naomi Novik's Tamarar, which is the Napoleonic War with dragons. Like, she takes the whole dragon rider concept and transposes it into Napoleonic times, and we get is a series of adventures following a captain in the British Army as he literally travels all around the world and becomes embroiled in different adventures and political situations, with the Napoleonic War as a backdrop. And it's everything is better with dragons, okay? everything. And Naomi Novik proved that with this series. Like, this series is entertaining, lighthearted. The friendship and just the bond between the captain and Tamara is it's extremely engaging to read, and the adventures that they go on are extremely fascinating because Naomi Novik puts them in some very interesting historical situations that was very interesting to read. Very interesting to read. Like, I can't think of another series quite like this, that combines just these different varied elements and tells the kind of stories that these books tell. It's very different, and it's a series that's worth trying if you're interested in it, to see if it works for you. But yeah, that's my number 63 pick. At number 62, I have Shannon Chakrabarty's Devabad. And this is a trilogy set in roughly 18th century Cairo, Egypt, where we follow a street rat named Nari who discovers she has magic and she can do things that no human should be able to do. So she, as a result of that, she becomes haunted and she flees across the desert towards the fabled city of Devabad, the city of Jinn. And when she arrives there, she becomes embroiled in a complex political situation that's happening at the time. And like, this is Shannon Chakrabarty's debut epic fantasy trilogy, and you don't often read books of this caliber as a debut. Like, Shannon Chakrabarty pulls no punches in this trilogy. She dives deep into the setting and looks at so many different. There's so many different themes and ideas and concepts just baked into this. There's concepts of racism, caste, exploitation, colonialism, you name it, exploitation of the you name it, it's in this. It's explored in this series in some way or another. Like, we follow Nari over the course of these 3 books in very different times, and it's just a fascinating, incredible read. These are largely political fantasy stories. Not to say that there isn't quite a bit of action and magic involved here and there, but and it's an absolutely incredible trilogy and worth trying. I won't talk more about it, even though I could probably go on for quite a bit more, because what's the fun in telling you everything? Go read it and experience it for yourself. At number 61, I have a classic of the fantasy genre, and that is Robert Holstock's Mythago Wood. And this is a classic epic fantasy. Sorry, not classic epic fantasy. It's a classic fantasy series surrounding the mysterious Raiho Wood, which is the last bit of primeval forest that left in Britain, and 2 sons who pick up their father's work to explore the forest. And what they find is essentially a microcosm of a strange realm that has been slowly consuming. The forest itself is essentially like a palimpsest of myth and legend and reality. Like, it's an extremely fascinating and strange and wonderful story. Like, we follow we follow the misadventures of these 2 brothers as they navigate this almost like a fairy realm without the fairies, in just how strange and different and wonderful and horrible this forest can be. Like, this is a book that just plays with concepts of like dream and reality and myth and time and these kind of things. Like, it goes to some interesting and fascinating and unforgettable places, and it's just an absolutely intense story from start to finish. Like, as far as those stories go, where as far as those like magic forest stories goes, I don't think they come better than this one. And that's why it's at number 61. I've only read the first 2 books in this series, but I really do need to read the rest, because I have immense faith that Robert Holstock it has delivered in this series something that's very unlike anything I've read to date. And yeah, those are my numbers 70 to 61. If you've read any of these, if you're interested in them, if any of them sound exciting, You drop a comment, let me know thoughts in general, and I'll see you next time as we continue going through the list. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.